Good afternoon, everyone. I have Pooja Jain, one of my dear friends on LinkedIn. We have known each other for a long time, and thanks a lot for agreeing to come on this interview as a guest. She's a passionate storyteller and an experienced data engineering by profession. She has around 5+ years of experience in the field of data engineering, analysis, and modeling in the banking, healthcare, sales, and the e-commerce domain. She holds strong statistical and analytics ability to explore the business ideas and portray innovative solutions. Experienced as a data enthusiast, she is working in GCP, AWS, and on other cloud technologies, including big data, predictive analytics, machine learning, and data modeling. Skilled with technologies and strong intellect with enthusiasm as an avid learner. She has also been got the LinkedIn Creator Accelerator program and also the part of the data science and women empowerment thought leader by Global AI Hub. It's a very privilege for me to host her, and thank you, Pooja, again for joining. And if you could give a quick introduction about yourself and your journey being a data science profession, it will be very nice for the listeners.
Thank you so much, Ashok. Firstly, thanks a lot for inviting me on this platform and giving me this opportunity to share my experience with the community. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the details you shared about me. Just adding a few more to it. I am Pooja Jain. I'm working as a senior data engineer with CRISIL. Recently changed my organization. Prior to that, I have been working with Quantify and TCS into the data domain, focusing more on doing and solving data solutions. And obviously, if I talk a little bit about my journey, how it began. So I have started my career. We can say I did bachelor's in technology in computer science and engineering from a university in Rajasthan. And then my interest was a lot towards data because I could see that coding is something that, okay, I'll do as per the requirement. But I used to feel like, okay, dealing with data is very important because what happens is we are always just relying on the data that we are getting on our plate. But what about the data that is actually getting generated in the background? How are we going to utilize that to solve problems? So that is what caught my interest. And I did a PG diploma into data science and engineering, trying to understand how data solutions are provided, which eventually got me into the field of data engineering, which helped me to actually understand, okay, data is not just predictive modeling or, building charts or just querying. It's above and beyond that. It is about gathering data, cleaning data, securing data, and such aspects. So focusing towards that, this is how my journey began. And currently I'm pursuing MTech in data science and engineering from BITS Pilani. Looking forward to another, crossing another challenging milestone ahead. So that's a little bit about myself.
And right now, like this is one of the things you have mentioned. You have mentioned Google Cloud Platform, AWS, and so you are working in all of them, or you are expertise on one. And if a person who wants to learn, person who is new to this area, into this field, which one will you suggest, and what will be the thought process about that?
Okay, so I've got an opportunity to work with AWS as well as GCP. Being lucky enough, I got multi-cloud exposure basically based on different projects. One was from healthcare, the other was from banking. So when I started my career into the cloud domain, my perspective was to understand why these cloud services are used and how they are used. Okay. So if I talk about AWS, if I build any ETL pipeline, or if I use those particular services to build up a architecture or a solution, the focus is more towards what are the databases that we are going to use. How are we going to orchestrate the pipelines? How are we going to clean the data? Okay. So our focus should be more towards the activities. Because let's say I want to do the orchestration, or I want to store the data, or I want to do cleaning, or I want to focus more on streaming data, right? So each platform has their own set of services. Now, definitely, if you are given an option, AWS is one of the most, like I can say, AWS is one such cloud provider that is most dominating in the market right now. Because we know that there are a lot of organizations preferring AWS. But whereas when I got an opportunity to work with GCP, I feel more comfortable working with GCP. The we are always comfortable with. So that is why maybe I am more comfortable with GCP because the way the platform is being built, it is very easy to understand how you want to explore and what are the tools you want to integrate. And since I have personally worked on a couple of projects on GCP, I feel it's more handy for me to do. Whereas the folks who have been working on AWS, they prefer AWS. So it's completely about the perspective and the kind of task you want to do. There might be times when you want to use Airflow. So Airflow is a tool for used for orchestration. Okay. And I feel that working with GCP provides Cloud Composer as a service, which internally has Airflow. So it gives a very good, compact, set of services that we can inbuilt use it. You don't have to explicitly call or do anything. So that is like just a small example to portray. But other than that, I would say is that focus on like the folks who are actually getting into this domain, they must focus on solving the problem. What kind of data it is, how we are going to clean it, how we are going to use it, what is the cleaning process that it is going to take, the durations, the security, all those aspects. So when we try to build an architecture with that, the only thing is after that, once you know the problem and once you understand the solution, you just need a platform that could be either AWS, GCP, or Azure. And post, if you get a preference that, okay, what is it? Is it GCP or AWS? You try to understand which is more cost optimized, which is more, you can say, easy to use, which is that our team members know more well. And what is the demand of the client again? So that is how we actually understand and prioritize any particular technology, I feel.
That's very good advice, Pooja. So one thing, Pooja, like I have not worked specifically on data engineering so much, but if a fresher comes to me
Mm.
or you to ask what project I can do outside a company to showcase my data engineering skills, because these technologies that companies have a lot of data like big companies, they will have these platforms like whatever you mentioned, the big three. But suppose a person who wants to showcase his knowledge and experience in some of these projects, to the data engineering projects, what advice will you give, like what type of projects he can do? Because the projects that I suggest them are basic API calls that they do from
Mm.
the open APIs or any API, YouTube API, Twitter API, and then they process the data in Python. But that is not showing them the data engineering skills. What
Mm.
people, what you said, right? The process of creating pipelines, making sure that the ingestions happen properly. So, what will you give them advice to do any project that people can do outside companies to showcase that they know these skills?
Okay, so I personally feel that when we work into any data engineering project, basically, there are three particular segments. One is how are you getting the data, as in data gathering or data extraction or ingestion, as you said, right? That is the first piece. Second is how are you processing the data. Now there are two ways. People can think that there is ETL and there is ELT. As we talk about pipelines, these are two terminologies that comes across very frequently. What happens is once you have the data, once you have extracted or gathered or ingested the data, how are you going to process it? Are you going to do any kind of transformation? Are you going to use any open source tools like we can use Spark or something like that? Or are we going to like it completely depends like what kind of tool we want to use, what kind of cleaning we want. If basic cleaning, then Python is enough with the inbuilt libraries it has. But if we want to do high level of data cleaning, if we have huge amount of data, then Spark or Kafka, based on the kind of data we want to process, we can use those kind of open source platforms. And again, the last part that comes is that what are we going to do with that data? Because once you have cleaned the data, once you have got it to your next layer, let's say I have raw layer, then I have another consumption layer, then a result layer. So I got the raw data, I processed it into the consumption layer. Now I want to gather result out of it. So what are we going to do with that data? Who is going to utilize it? Can we actually merge it with some existing clean data set and do some kind of visualizations, do some kind of analytics, or maybe give it to some other team or some other folks who are working on machine learning project. So that can actually help us building a team. So the platforms, it completely depends. So now, since I'm doing masters, I know I need to build a project. Okay. So if I have that much of capacity to take some compute engine on any of the cloud, from any of the cloud solution providers who they have, and I can build a compute engine and I can try to build my project on top of it. That is one way of it. Other is to just utilize the open source tools and technologies and then try to build. Now, there are times when people say, ma'am, how do I gather the data? How do I start, because there are a lot of open source data sets present on the platforms. But if you do not want to utilize, there are two ways. One is you can utilize the existing data sets, get it into your raw zone. Because what happens in the recent data engineering projects is there are a lot of data migration projects. What they do is they get their data as it is first, and then they start the process. Why? Because they have already been storing the data for so long in some XYZ databases. But now, since cloud is getting, in demand in the market, and now since we know we cannot keep storing data on the servers, we cannot keep having those old databases kept present. So we need to get into this cloud. So getting the data on cloud into the raw zone and then start the processing, then use Spark frameworks or Kafka frameworks, or maybe like if I talk about GCP, we have Apache Beam as another option to use. So there are various like fields. Now it completely depends on the person what kind of project they want to do. Do they just want to portray their skills that yes, I know how to build an ETL pipeline, I know how to use the orchestration, the scheduling of the pipelines, the cleaning of the data, and then moving them. And there are experienced folks who would say that no, I have 3 years of experience or 4 years of experience. So they would want to actually understand that how can I build a streaming pipeline or a Spark pipeline that can portray my PySpark skills also, that can help me explore maybe say some tools related to cloud also. So that is very important that on what level you are. And obviously, as we keep talking or emerging into the experience domain, there are folks who have experience, but they aren't very clear on the basics, the concepts of data warehousing. I know these terminologies feel very theoretical in time, data warehouse, data lake, and all these things, but they're very important to know if we are working into the field of data engineering. So that is
I mean,
something like I would like to add.
yeah, amazing. So thanks, Pooja, for that. So now, see, now when we specifically say about data engineering, right? What are the main skills that are required for a person? He should be what I see that he should be good in coding, right? That is very important.
Yes.
But what all are the other things other than coding that a person should be having to be a good have build a good career in the data engineering sub vertical of the data science?
So from my perspective, I will tell you something a little bit about myself before I give this details. So when I started, I wanted to become a data scientist. Okay, my interest was that okay, I want to build models and I want to work on machine learning stuff and doing analytics and visualization, all those things. But when I started to learn, like get extreme hands-on to Python and SQL, and then when I started to understand the concepts of data warehouse, data lake, data mart, and all these things, what I realized is along with the skills like Python. So when we talk about skills like Python, SQL, Spark, These are the basic things that any 1 to 2 year experienced person should be knowing. Then they should be knowing what is data warehouse and the data domain verticals that I mentioned. Then ETL, ELT, what are the differences? How and why the various databases are being prepared? What is the difference between SQL and NoSQL? When to use which category of databases? So these are very important tools and technologies that we should know. But again, we should also know that why each particular tool or technology is important. Because there are times when you have to deal with complex data sets or files or something, or maybe unstructured data. Then it's very important to understand the NoSQL category of databases and which one to use at what time. So I often see people hearing, I know Python and SQL, and I want to get into data engineering. So no, Python and SQL just won't help. They have to understand the basic concepts of data engineering, the concepts of big data, how the Hadoop ecosystem has evolved, and why we are moving towards cloud. What are the challenges that we are facing? And that is when they can actually understand the, we say on the world around data engineering.
Hmm. Yeah, actually, yeah, this word is actually very new. Data engineering word is it is a new word, right? Because these things have been happening for a long time. And before there were a single data analyst or used to do all these works. But as the data grew, right? As the data grew, as it became more complex, then this particular word and this particular domain got emerged and is ever growing out there as well. Yeah. So now coming to you mentioned, see, there are big threes that there are there for data engineering that people should focus on. But while you were giving your answers and you're giving responses, you were mentioning about a lot of open sources that is available, open source platforms to do ETLs and data engineering processes, right? Where you don't need to other than the big three.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very good for people who are beginners to start their journey by understanding these open source tools that are available and build their career up, on that. So could you just throw some more light on what exactly are those open source tools that people can just start quickly learning about these concepts and start doing hands-on?
Definitely. So, if we talk about the open source tools, we know that Spark, Kafka, these are few, you can say, platforms or frameworks that can be integrated with any platform that you want to work with. If I talk about even with Python, so I know I can install a Spark library and try to work with Spark, right? Similarly, if we talk about Apache, so there are a lot of tools like available, like you can say, and Nifi is there, and then you will have Pentaho data integration as an option. Or like these, now if you see recently, Mage is coming up, right? So that is also something very trending. So keeping up with the market on what tools and technologies are actually in demand will definitely help, right? Along with the platforms that we already have.
Um, Amazing. Now coming to like you said, personally you wanted to become a data scientist, and you thought that data engineering is like more exciting and interesting when you were going through the process. But what advice you will give? Like many people also ask me this question, right? What should I do in data engineering or data analyst or data scientist? And my advice to them is basically you have to get in the ground. You have to at least do a project, like the simple project that we do, right? Like any project that we do, it involves little bit of all the data scientist is okay, maybe if you want to do some predictions, but that is up to the type of project. But data engineering and data analysis are used in mostly all the data science projects. Whatever you do, little bit of these components are used if you want to build a dashboard on any data set that is available. So you will get a good hands on to do all those things. And while you're doing these projects and while you're learning, then you can make your choice. You cannot have it immediately since the start that this is good for me, this is good for me. Unless you don't become hands on, you don't practice, you don't see what is actually happening, then until then you cannot decide. But at least start by doing a project in which you know a little bit of data engineering, because that is required, right? Even when I'm doing a project now, I have to at least know what is happening, how the data is coming, how I'm doing the cleaning, how I'm making sure that the data is fine, there is no you can say it is clean, it is I'm not missing any data from the stream. So those things are very important for any project. And over that, the data analysis, what you want to take out of the data. So this, we all tell that 80% of anyone's job is managing the data.
Exactly.
And after that, you do, if it is required. If it is required, you do any prediction, forecasting, or whatever you need to do. But 80% you have to do. Without that, you cannot proceed further. So so this is my advice, is very practical. But what will you suggest, like what should be there in people's mind, or should they have immediately that they need to only focus on data engineering and not focus on other things? Or what is your thoughts about that?
So I would say is do not go with the hype. Because what folks actually do is like they see 2021 and the 2022 era was more about data scientists. And now since we are seeing this 2023 is getting more towards data engineering, I see the people are like drastically switching their careers. They're just saying, no, ma'am, this is more in demand. Pooja, I've heard that no data science, like data engineering is getting more paid. So the hype and the paid and the market boosting is not that should decide your career, is what I feel. They should actually, as you mentioned, the right thing or the right word, get the ground level grilling. Understand what data is. How do you play around data? How does data looks? How do you build the model? How do you get that data before
Hmm.
right? From data engineering, data science, and data analyst, they must at least do project on any one component of it and understand the other two aspects very well, even if they are not getting opportunity to do hands-on. So that they should at least get a clarity that which particular aspect is that is causing more interest towards it. Because I have seen folks with 10 years of experience also getting such kind of confusions because they're not very sure. They are very good with their domain knowledge, but they're not very sure that which one to pick up. So it's very important to understand that the tools and technologies would be 50% same across the all the three platforms or the domains, I would say. 50% we all know that we need Python, we need SQL, we need domain understanding, we need to know how data is coming across or flowing across. The other 50% is specific to the job role for a data scientist, a data engineer, or a analyst.
So now you told about hype, right? Data engineering, you said is 2023, but I feel that the hype is little bit changed now. People are talking about generative AI. Every learn about
Yes.
generative AI. So
Yeah.
so now personally, many people ask me, I want to become generative AI expert. For there is no answer for this, to be honest. Till now, there are a lot of things that you need to learn, but what are your thoughts specifically when I'm talking about hype cycle, right? You already mentioned that answer, that you should not go behind hypes. And I know your answer, but I just want to know more specifically about generative AI. There is, it is in the news. Everyone is talking about this,
Yes.
right? Not even technical people, but even news media, even everyone is talking about news, governments, organizations, NGOs, because of the positive and the negative. And many people are also trying to make money out of this, right?
Right.
By building, you can say, no, I will not call even apps. It is just like a layer over GPT,
There.
just a simple layer
Correct.
extension over GPT, and selling it for money and all those things. And YouTube also is filled with these make quick money with Chat GPT and all those
Hacks.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now coming to
Right.
this, and this is actually why I'm talking to you and asking you this is as well, as you know, you already mentioned that there is a lot of confusion.
Mhm.
And since chat GPT launch, the confusion has tripled, according to me.
Right.
Now there
Right.
are a lot more confusion in the market now, because I run an academy for last 5 years, and now people are asking me specifically, why should I learn Python code when chat GPT gives me the Python code? And these
Right.
are the responses I am getting, because auto GPT is there. You give them the instruction, they will build the whole application itself. Then why should I
Right.
learn about all these things? So these are the type of comments I am getting for now. I am just also waiting for the wave to go, uh, till, because, but I feel that this is a wave. It is going to definitely change few things, but the foundation and the fundamentals that we are talking about will always remain the same, that we are discussing today as well, right? So I wanted to know your thoughts on this. I know, because this is a very I do a lot of talk about these topics nowadays. Hear a lot of opinions about these things. Some may be positive, some may be negative, but let's see. I just wanted to know your thoughts on this, and then we can take it further.
Sure. So, since the launch of ChatGPT, just like others, even I was very excited. So, it's not that you have to go with the hype, as you said. It's about how you can actually inculcate the hype around AI or around generative AI to ease up your task. Now, if we see or if we focus, there are, as you said, Python code can be automated. There are a lot of tasks that can be automated, but that doesn't mean that your job can be taken away. But what that actually means is you can do something more or something more innovative that can actually help you use this particular technology. So now, being a data engineer, I do not have to think that how precisely I have to write that code, because I know definitely ChatGPT can do that for me. But how can I optimize that particular pipeline? How can I make it more scalable? How can I make, because ChatGPT cannot build an infrastructure for me, right? They can write the code and give it to me. But the building the infrastructure, getting insights, that is something a person has to do by itself. That is somewhere the data team has to build it by itself. Today, if a business person gives you a task that, okay, fine, I want this kind of insights, to get that particular insight, people cannot just, say chat GPT, I want this particular insight, build an ETL pipeline, do the prediction modeling, and give me the analytics. That is not something that makes sense. We can just try to ease up our task. We can tell, okay, fine, write an algorithm and give it to me so that I can utilize that to get the answer, to make a particular decision out of it. So that is where I feel the generative AI is moving towards. I am not sure like how far it is going to go and what more is going to get modified. But few potential benefits that I see is that the task automation, ease of generating applications, understanding the importance of data quality and trying to improve that are few perks to it. Whereas, as you mentioned, that definitely everything has its own pros and cons. I feel that the potential risk could be security. As we all know that we are actually misunderstanding AI. We are just assuming that it's going to solve all our problems. It's going to take away our jobs. It's going to cause threat to the society. So the negative biasness that is falling around, the misunderstanding that we are having, that is what is actually very concerning. And same way, the security, the fake data generation, the concerns over that aspect are equally something that we should focus on. So the whatever negatives we have of generative AI. So the people
Yes.
who think that the generative AI is, actually causing problem, they must understand what is the problem and how can we solve it. Instead of just following the hype and trying to, switch their careers or focus towards generating money out of it.
Yeah, and see, as you told, and I echo with your thoughts, is that generative AI is just, it is not a thing separate, right? It is not something separate. It is, you can use it as a tool to do whatever you are doing in a better manner. That is the starting point. Making a career on generative AI right now, There are some technologies that you can learn, but the jobs are really limited, right? Like the large language models and specifically prompt engineering, specifically to build those large language models and applications over that. It is not, as of now, there is not so much demand. uh, what is the demand is how you can use those tools to make your current work that you are doing more efficiently and more quickly, right?
Right, right.
That is one way of seeing it. And also large language models, those things are, I know it, those things are going to come, those things are evolving right now. And there may be not so many jobs as of now that I am seeing that people they're asking for people who are experienced in large language models, because building large language models like OpenAI, as you know, the company that has GPT, has they have very less employees, right? They have around
Right.
less than 100 employees. So you don't need a lot of resources to make large language models, but you need resources to use them in whatever business
Correct.
case that you're trying to solve. So this is one way of telling you. It is good to know about these things, but building a career directly in large language models and is right now it is there is some time for it to come up. Like while companies start building their own language models, that will take some time, according to what I feel. What so now coming to your LinkedIn journey, right? So tell,
Mhm.
because I see that you are very much active on LinkedIn, and we also I think met 2 years back on LinkedIn. And tell me your what started your motivation to be active on LinkedIn, and since how long are you posting, and what has been your journey on LinkedIn?
Okay, so I guess I started hunting for jobs, frankly, like every other person on LinkedIn, I guess. But what actually, when I was searching for jobs, what I realized is it's okay. Like jobs is something. There are a lot of other platforms that we will be, sharing our resumes with, along with LinkedIn. But when I was actually going through LinkedIn, so initial times I used to see, okay, there are job postings also on LinkedIn, right? Then I started to see there are a lot of references and resources shared by some people who are on that domain or in that particular area. So what actually caught my interest was that why not actually keep resharing this? Because what during my times, like when I was working into this engineering part and all that, right? I was not very much aware about LinkedIn. Okay. And I used to just find resources, keep on Googling and finding insightful resources. But then I realized that it's very, very important to keep it very, what do you say? Keep it very simple. You get the documents, you get the references, you get the articles, and you keep sharing it. Right? That is what a lot of people on LinkedIn do. But when I started to reshare these articles, when I started to reshare the carousels and other things, I realized is that every other person is doing the same thing. Why not
Hmm.
add some value to it? So that
Hmm.
is where my content creation journey started somewhere around 1.5 years back. And I just started to, write some messages or write some key skills or something that I experienced in that particular career from those references or resources. And I used to share that. What I found interesting was that people, especially the freshers and beginner level people, they found it very informative and helpful. And they used to ping me that how can I, what more should I learn? So that is where I caught the audience. It's very important to, get the right set of audience who is actually going to get benefited from your content. So
Hmm.
that's how I started sharing Python, SQL resources, machine learning resources, storytelling, data visualization, then big data resources. And that eventually kept on moving ahead. And the good part was the last year LinkedIn Accelerator program. That was I would say, a very fruitful program that actually helped me evolve my entire content creation journey. And I have seen my followers maybe somewhere from 15,000 to 25,000 rise to 1 lakh by continuous efforts of being consistent on LinkedIn, being very, giving the right set of information to the right set of population or the network that we have. That's how I evolved. Yeah.
So now I have two questions for you. One is it is not related to LinkedIn, but I forgot to ask you before is about big data. This
Mm-hmm.
actually this word when I was working in 2007, this was a very big buzzword. Big data, Hadoop. There were a lot of training institutes and teaching about HDFS, Hadoop, and all those things. The big data framework, it is a revolution, and all those things that were there.
Mm-hmm.
And now people don't talk so much about big data, specifically Hadoop, HDFS, clusters, and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I feel personally, maybe you can add on it, is now these platforms are taking care of it internally. We as a user, we just get serverless, you can say, experience. We just write a code in the platform, and then all these things is taken care in the architecture behind the scenes, and we don't
Yes.
need to. This is what is my experience, but I wanted to hear from a data engineering expert that is this buzz. Do we really need to know about this HDFS, map reduce? And because I have personally studied this, I had done a course in 2007 for 6 months in these technologies. That's why I remember these terminologies so much. But right now, I don't think it has been used so much. Maybe in the backend it has been used. People are developing these tools, but not so much as a programmer or who is doing who is writing the code and doing the front end programming part of it.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, right, earlier it was actually in demand. Like it was very, big data, the three V's, then the four V's came, now the five
Hmm.
V's are there. And we used to actually learn and explore about it. That's true. But what I have seen is, as you mentioned, that the serverless computing services are already taking care of it. The platforms are
Hmm.
built in such a manner that the Hadoop ecosystem is going to take care of it in the backend. Now you just have to utilize the systems, the cloud systems, in order to actually create the clusters. But what configurations in detail are to be given, that is being taken care by the backend system itself. That's right. That's absolutely right. But what has happened is that in the last few years, whatever was built on the Hadoop systems, all those things, now people want to move that to cloud.
Hmm.
So if a person doesn't knows big data, the Hadoop systems, the HDFS, the Hive, and all those things, how are they going to move it to the cloud? The data migration, there used to be Uzi workflows at that time
Hmm.
in the big data systems, which are now moving on to data flow and data prep. And if you talk about Python, AWS, you will have AWS Glue and other other clusters, EMR clusters, and move all those things over there. So now we can say that okay, it's not like you need to know ABC of big data. I am not saying that okay, you have to know how the map reduce code is going to be written, because that is something anyways we can find it on Google, we can get it from GPT, or we can actually skip it. Because now what people want is that do you understand that framework? Understanding the framework is very important, big data framework. Because if we understand the big data framework, we understand the backend of our cloud. We know if I know if I'm running a data prop, if I'm running a Spark job on data prop, how is it going to take care in the back? So it's very important to understand the basic concepts, the architecture, how it works. And if you're working in any, like maybe by God's grace, let's say you got a project to work from doing the migration from Hadoop systems to cloud, you will have to eventually understand those frameworks so that you can understand their system and how you have to replicate it on cloud. So we cannot forget or skip that thing, but I'm not saying we should know, everything from that thing. That's where
So
I feel because, yeah, it's important to know Apache.
So basically, for specific use cases that you mentioned, like data migration and where you person is really involved in the back end of data engineering, they should know about
Yeah.
these tools and technologies that is there. And one now coming back to your LinkedIn question, because this big data thing, people keep asking me because I remember there was a big hype. Now no one uses that word much, the big data word. So, but it is still important. It is still important for a lot of things. We understand that. And now coming to your LinkedIn Accelerator program that you mentioned. So one learning that you can share with our listeners, like who are beginning their journey on LinkedIn, and personally, you also, we have talked about this, is like LinkedIn algorithm in the last 6 months is very has changed a lot, right? Because the
Yeah.
impressions or something is happening that it is like before, like when we started 2 years back, our reach impressions were a lot more than as of today because of some of the changes in the algorithm and all those things. But what will you give your learnings from the LinkedIn Accelerator program, talking to so many influencers? What will be one of the advices you will give for people who are starting their journey, or maybe are they struggling to maintain their journey, like
Yeah.
because for us, like for me, I know that not today, not tomorrow, it will grow slowly. But for the new people who are struggling to get noticed, what advice will you give them?
So one single line advice: don't just create, also consume. What I feel is it's important. The people are craving to create content, to share things, and that to the beginners who have actually not experienced the industry, not even 1 2 years. So it's important to consume the content. It's important to understand what is actually happening on the platform. What is it that the experienced professionals are actually trying to convey? The demand
Yeah.
in the market. It's very important. So if you understand the community well, and still if you feel no, there is something extra that I have, which these people are not sharing, or the platform is not having it proactively, and if you then share that particular thing, that makes sense. So that's just a small advice I felt when I was into the LinkedIn
Yeah.
Accelerator program.
When you say consume, can I add one more thing that I have seen that maybe
Sure.
you'll agree is engaging on when you consume, write feedbacks in a
Exactly.
very not one line but more details, like what have you learned, and you can add something extra or some summarize that in a positive way, so that they will also notice you, and you will also get noticed by other people in the group. So that is one way. And when I started also, this was my you can say agenda of the day, like at least go to 5 content creators who you admire or who you like, and write a comment, read the article properly and write your comment in that, write your suggestion or your
Yes.
input. And that gave me also some experience, and they also noticed me. And that helped in two things. One is when I sent them a connection request, they accepted immediately because they knew me, because I was engaging on them. And second is it gave me also practice and some visibility. So that is a very good advice: consuming and being patient. And it is,
Exactly.
yeah, you, it is not a numbers game, right? It is, you have to give value. So thanks, Pooja. Before we conclude this interview, any final thoughts if to our listeners that you want to share that we missed out, or maybe I missed out asking you, that you wanted to convey to our listeners, our community?
So as you talked about learning, you talked about LinkedIn, you talked about growing. What I feel is it's important to stay consistent and, as you said, patient. If we are consistent, patient, and trying to actually get the best out of ourselves, be it into growing the community, building a new platform, or building a new career, we have to give some time and stay consistent. We cannot expect, immediate results out of it. So that is something I would like to say to your and my audience who are going to watch us, that it's very important to keep up doing and believe in what you are doing, that it will eventually pay off. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Before end, I ask all my guests one question. What are your future plans like in your career
Okay.
and on LinkedIn? Like anything you have in mind, that any specific milestone that you have?
So if I talk about, so I am not a very, very active person doing podcast. This is something I am getting out of myself, out of my comfort zone to do it. Okay. And which I am actually liking it. So I'm not doing too long, but next few years, I want to actually create visibility, create value of the content I am building. If I talk about the platform on LinkedIn, collaborate with folks with whom I can actually build something very interesting that can definitely help people add value out of it. So I've recently, few months back, I've added a line. I'm open to collaborate because I actually want to collaborate and do something extraordinary out of my comfort zone. And if I talk about my career, I wish or I am actually looking forward to get more expertise into the data engineering field along with AI. AI is something now which is not just hype, but it is important for the folks, especially who are into the data world. It is very important to know how you can actually utilize AI. It's not about knowing the algorithm, but knowing how can you utilize that to make your lives better. So these are
Yes.
two categories where I am looking forward to grow my career.
Thank you. Best of luck for your future, and look
Thank you.
forward to talk to you soon. And it was very, very nice talking to you. And have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.